Okay, this video is called What is Art? We'll talk a little bit about art here. This right here is the inside of St. Patrick's Cathedral, which was consecrated, started by the Bishop John Hughes. I recently did a book review about his autobiography, and he was a great man. Okay, and he wanted to have a cathedral. So it was started in 1858 in New York. And just to get a sense, this is a typical cathedral. This isn't even one of the more beautiful ones. There's a sense of light, of hope, of awe from the high ceiling. It reminds one of the forest canopy, of looking up to God, of what to aspire to. And all the light coming in, the stained glass windows, the paintings. It's beautiful. Catholic cathedrals are beautiful. Okay, so that's one thing art can be do, to inspire you towards God and to show you something beautiful. Oh, sorry, I got this slide to go a little faster here. Okay, so some other things. This is in New York. And just by comparison, here's the cathedral building, how unique it stands out, what a personality it has, how individual it is. Compare it with these other buildings in New York. Typical modern crap, you know, just they look like animal cages. And the typical building nowadays is, it basically looks like, you know, an animal cage. And then there's a statue of a turd in front of it. Tom Wolfe, the writer, is the one who wrote this out. He said, every modern office building looks like animal cages and has a statue of a turd in front. That's a disgrace. That's disgusting. That's an insult. That's the artist making a joke, okay? Laughing at the building and the people and at the chumps who would pay for that kind of crap. And people should speak up when they see that. It's a degradation of the American citizen to allow that crap to be in public. Okay, here's the house of Loretta Lynn when she was growing up in her childhood. And she, you know, it's a poor house in Kentucky, but there's a dignity to it. There's an individualness to it. And all these wires weren't there, I'm sure, when she was growing up. And I just show you this is her childhood home. And it's a, you know, a single family home. And now here's like the apartments in Russia for the people who are lucky enough to have an apartment. They look like crap. There's no life in there. There's no soul. You want to talk about housing looking like animal cages? This is Russia in the 1900s. A crap hole. Okay, and here's just an example of how a painting can crystallize an important cultural moment. So this comes from the play Antigone, where, you know, Antigone was the daughter of Oedipus and the sister of Eteocles and Polynices, and there was a civil war in Thebes, and this is her brother, and she wanted to give him a fair burial, Polynices. And King Creon, who felt Polynices had gone against him, declined him to have a burial. Okay, so she did it anyways, even though she was sentenced to death. And King Creon's like, well, why did you defy me? And she said, because there are laws of gods that are above the laws of man. They are not just temporary. The laws of heaven are for all time. So anyways, this inspires people to be good, inspires people to do the right thing, and that's another thing that art does. So Ayn Rand made a magnificent quote in her book, The Romantic Manifesto. She says, art is the concretization of metaphysics, meaning that it makes concrete and visual that which we believe in our heart, in our soul, okay? And that's a great quote. And art, also, Aristotle had said, the important thing about art is the inward sense of feeling and thought that it gives us. More important than the externalities of the painting, meaning that, yes, we appreciate the artist's skill, but more important is the story of Antigone. Okay, Aristotle also said, art and literature is more important than history because it not only shows you what was, but it shows you what could be. And that's also true. It inspires people to be good, to do the right thing, to be noble. Okay, and then I also like this image here of just the ripple effect in water. If people have that attitude to do the right thing, to be good, to be noble, to give the other person the benefit of the doubt, that love thy neighbor concept, so to speak, it sort of ripples outward and everyone is better off. And that creates a better society for everyone. Okay. And now here's what you get with modern art. This came from 1917. You know, this jerk Marcel Duchamp, in an art show, he put a urinal in there. He called it the fountain, okay, turning it on its side. This is what you get with atheism and communism. Everything is a joke. Life is meaningless. It's a degradation of mankind, okay? And this is sort of the lighter side of communism, that, life has no meaning, no significance. Why not, put a urinal in an art museum? These modern art museums are a disgrace. They're an insult to mankind, and people should be offended by them. Okay, here's basically the modern human predicament. Basically, the game plan for this year, for this winter in particular, is get rid of as many Christians as possible by the Dems, the Commie Party. And, the Christians' only hope is to rally to the cross. Here's the shepherd, saying, come to me at the cross. The dogs will protect them for a little while, but they can only do so much. The wolves are going to get them. It's inevitable if they don't work together and help each other. And so this is it. This is life, okay? The wolves are going to pick off the Christians one by one, and then everybody else is going to get screwed and pushed into slavery. That's what's coming. Okay, so basically, Satan is sort of like communism, and it's a dominant force in the world. I mean, it's already taken over Russia, and they're still sort of not really fully escaped from it. It's taken over China. It's in the process of taking over the EU. It's in the process of trying to take over Ireland, Australia, New Zealand, and now it's in the process of partially taking over the United States. So I hope it doesn't happen, but it's going that way. All right. So this is what it's all about. Either people are going to stick together and the good is going to win, because all people have to do is say, no, we don't want this commie BS. If you do that, it won't happen. But the average person is so ignorant and clueless that they won't. They're not doing it so far, at least. And if they don't, we're screwed. Okay. So art, how better can you capture what's happening than look at that painting? And art can be a sense of civic cultural pride. Pericles, the great statesman of Athens, in the early 400s, BC, he helped build this great city on a hill, city on Acropolis. We all aspire to that, and that's a common metaphor of Christianity, the light on a hill, the city on a hill, and that's been referred to by Ronald Reagan amongst others, okay? And it was beautiful. The statue of Athena, the Parthenon, was magnificent, okay? And next here we have is Pericles' funeral oration, again given at the Acropolis. You can see the great Parthenon here, the statue of Athena. It's magnificent. The ancient Greeks were magnificent. They're one of the most awesome things you could ever study. The ancient Greeks and the Italian Renaissance, all right? And people should know the history of Western civilization and where they came from, because once you see it and you study other civilizations, it's so awesome, you will be proud of it. And when you're proud of something and you learn to love it, you'll have more appreciation for it and maybe stand up for it and not allow people to take over your art museums and, have statues of feces, okay? Put statues of feces in front of your buildings, okay? A society, just all you have to say is, what would a person from the Renaissance say if they came here and they saw a statue of a turd in front of a building? If they went into a museum and there were statues of turds, they would say, you people are, scumbag, idiot, losers, okay? All right, so another thing that art can do is it can very quickly capture a powerful metaphor, allegory, okay? This is Plato's cave, and how most of the fools were just looking at the shadows on the wall. The persons who tell the stories control society, and only the few, escaped out of this nonsense cave into the true sunshine, the true light. Socrates, the light of philosophy. Jesus Christ, the light of morals and ethics and whatnot. Okay, and here's the other concept of art helps us to preserve history, to preserve the past, to preserve our culture, our ancestry. And this, of course, is the story of the burning of Troy and the Trojan War, from the Iliad. And as Troy was burning, young Aeneas carried his father out of burning Troy, and that symbolizes that it is the job of young and middle-aged men to carry on the traditions of their fathers, of their culture, of their society by teaching it to young people. Because as Will Durant had said, civilization is not guaranteed. If it's not taught to the younger generation, it will disappear and vanquish and will descend down into savagery and third world barbarism, as America is clearly doing in the last 40 years here. Oh, and I joked that here's, the same thing for nutrition and health. If you don't teach people what, our forefathers in nutrition and health, like McDougall and the other great ones, Kempner and Pritikin and Burkitt, for example, then that knowledge will be lost. Because I can assure you, Big Pharma does not want that knowledge passed on to the next generation. So it's our duty to try to educate people so they'll have a chance at being healthy. Okay, you can't create health from just bad diet and lifestyle and a bunch of pills. Okay, another thing that it does is art, the paintings, they capture and transmit the stories of the generation of the culture. So here is Diogenes, the philosopher of Greece, and Alexander the Great, stopped by to talk with him. He's known as a rather entertaining, humorous, fun, clever character. And he asked Diogenes, Alexander the Great said, "Is there anything I can grant you? I will grant you whatever wish you ask for." And he said, "Yeah, I wish you would get out of my sun." And then Diogenes had his lantern and he's walking around Athens, and they said, "What are you looking for?" He says, "I'm looking for one honest man." And so these allegories, metaphors, they create something that the culture can all recognize, and it enhances communication to be able to speak about things in terms of a metaphor, a story, a fable like this. And it shows the respect of the ancient Greeks for the individual. So here is a modern art museum. This one is in Netherlands, the city of Rotterdam. And look at this. That's not art. These are just statues of feces. It's degrading. It's an insult. This comes from atheistic Darwinism, communism, okay? This is not acceptable. And you have to be able to say this is not acceptable. Don't be so open-minded that your brain falls out, okay? This is disgusting. It's an insult. All right, now I'll just show you. Now here's real magnificent art. This is Thomas Cole. He's the greatest story painter that ever lived. This is from a series of paintings from the 1830s called The Voyage of Life. Coming out of the birth canal, the baby, the sense of abundance, mama, guardian angel, everything is wonderful, okay? And now here's the next step. Youth, idealistic, strong, powerful, high testosterone, headed towards their ideal future, the city in the sky. Okay, mama, guardian angel's not quite so close anymore and protective. And the reality of the painting is it's all smooth water until you take the turn in the bend, and all of a sudden it turns into rapids, and you got to deal with all the stuff that happens in one's later 20s and then one's 30s and middle age, okay, and just deal with it. And here is the Middle Age painting, and this is about what it gets like at times. The oars have fallen out of the boat. He's hitting the rapids. There's a lot of rocks right there. Guardian angel mama is far away, and the demons are coming in. He's praying and hoping. It's a magnificent painting. Okay, and here's more painting. This is Course of Empire by Thomas Cole. And I don't even have all the paintings. There's more paintings from the Voyage of Life series, and there's more paintings from this Course of Empire, but it shows what is called, the Course of Empire, based on the theories of Giambattista Vico about how civilizations rise and fall, and they'll hit their apex when they're wealthy and they've got good families and a good culture and a good society, but they tend to drift into immorality and be destroyed. So this could certainly portray ancient Rome, and it could certainly portray the modern United States of America. So why did Rome fall? Was it because too many barbarian invaders? Was it a loss of morality that weakened the people as they became more and more decadent? Was it because they didn't take their civil duties seriously? Like Caligula wanted his horse to be a senator in Rome. Was it because the plumbing, the pipes were made out of lead in the aristocrats' houses, and they became stupid from the lead toxicity? Edward Gibbon, the English guy, Protestant, who was also an atheist and kind of a scumbag, but a very intelligent fellow, wrote the history of the decline and fall of the Roman Empire, and he blamed a lot of it on Catholic Christianity, saying that it was a religion of weaklings compared to Roman paganism. But they tried to portray that like against the Irish, who they sort of brutalized and enslaved. But anyways, there's some thoughts there of why is USA collapsing like Rome did, and there's a lot of parallels to it, big time parallels to it. Okay, and paintings also capture a story, a history. And this is the Inferno by Dino di Durante. It's a book of paintings about Dante's Inferno. It's magnificent. I made a metaphor of this to health. I talked about that in a separate lecture, but it's a magnificent painting the circles of hell. I joke that one is filled with caffeine and coffee, one river. Another one's filled with energy drinks and high fructose corn syrup. Another one's filled with alcohol. The rivers of hell, the circles of hell. Okay, also a painting can capture, a historical moment. This is Copernicus, realizing that the sun was the center of the universe, not Earth, okay? And it's magnificent. He was another Catholic priest, okay? Science comes from Catholicism, so people try to say religion and science don't go together. That's nonsense. The modern scientific method came from the Catholic Church, and that's well proven and documented extensively. Okay, if you want to read a historical book about it, read Rodney Stark, okay? There's plenty of other ones that'll tell you that too. Anybody who's studied it knows that. Okay, I just showed this painting because this is Oscar Wilde. Oscar Wilde was part of a movement during the Victorian Renaissance in the 1800s called Art for Art's Sake. And I do like Oscar Wilde. He's a very clever fellow from Ireland, and he had all his own personal difficulties, and he did some great things, and I admired him for being a great playwright. And I did like the idea that he celebrated art, but he sort of, degenerated and became a lowlife, and he became an alcoholic and abandoned his family, and it was kind of pathetic. But he did do some great things also. So anyways, this is a painting of Oscar Wilde at a gallery of paintings in, the Royal Academy in the 1800s. Painted in 1883, this one. And John Ruskin was his professor. We're going to come back to John Ruskin in just a moment. Okay, a picture amplifies a metaphor. You want to go through life, try to be a Gulliver, not a Lilliputian. If you want to heal disease, you have to be low-fat vegan to be a Gulliver instead of a Lilliputian, okay? And conventional medicine's like a whole bunch of Lilliputians trying to hold down the Gullivers. So I like the way a metaphor makes something more powerful. Like Carl Jung had said, someone who speaks in metaphor of primordial images and stories speaks with 1,000 voices. They just carry more oomph to them. And, Catholic art also has a sense of humor, as did the Greek art. So this is the old Pygmalion in Galatea, where the sculptor falls in love with his statue of a woman, his sculpture, and she comes alive. And then Gerald Pollack, pretty Polish name there, jokes, scientists love their models as much as artists do. Okay, another thing I like about Christianity is it's syncretic, meaning that it takes what it learns from other cultures and other ages, and it learns from them. It incorporates them into itself. And so I love Thomas Aquinas. He sort of took everything he could learn from classical civilization and saw how it related to the modern world and to Christianity, and he sort of incorporated that into it. So I really admire that. It's open-minded to new things, and it can include them without destroying itself, and that's a beautiful thing. And if I had to pick three heroic individuals from the past who I feel like are my greatest role models, it would be Aristotle, Aquinas, and Isaac Newton. Okay, and I try to be like Thomas Aquinas, to be able to bring things together and show what's best of them and how they can work together and make them all work. Okay. And Christianity has a sense of humor. So if you look at this painting, this is Sir Galahad, Goody Two-Shoes Galahad, the only one who was good enough to find the Holy Grail. And obviously the way it's painted, there's a sense of humor about this painting. Hopefully you'll get the joke, okay? And then, like the Celtic cross, and then he's got these little wings on his helmet like he's an angel. It's funny, okay? The only one noble enough to find the Holy Grail of the King Arthur's knights. Lancelot was the best knight, but he was naughty, chasing after Guinevere. All right. And a painting, too, can symbolize an individual quest. So this is Sadak in Search of the Waters of Forgetting. And just like any of us, when we have a difficult goal that's worthwhile, though, we keep after it. You got to be tenacious, climbing hill after hill, rock after rock. So I think that's a beautiful painting. I like John Martin, the artist. He's an English artist. Okay, and here's another historical event people should not think. Christianity is not some, tyrannical thing. It's the religion of the poor, of the beggar, of the poorest people in ancient Rome and throughout the history of the world. Every poor, lonely, lost person, Christianity is open to them. The aristocratic cultures and religions, they don't allow the poor. Christianity is open to anyone. All it is an individual choice, and then they can choose to live that way. So anyways, Nero, scumbag, kind of like what just happened in the Maui massacre with the fires in Lahaina and whatnot. basically he just burned down a whole bunch of Rome because he wanted that land to make his own buildings and have as his own property. And then he blamed it on the Christians. And then he, instead of blaming it on climate change, he blamed it on the Christians. And then he would use Christians as torches, at night. He would just set them on fire, okay? All right, and another thing, because what had happened, I'd heard a lot of bad things said about Christianity, when I was in college and then through my 20s, and I was too busy, working as a young doctor, but I had a little bit of time in my 30s where I decided to sit down and figure out what really happened. What was the truth about all this criticism of Christianity? And I was like, holy crap. Once I studied the art, the history, the theology, the apologetics, the philosophy, the aesthetics of it, I was like, oh my God, most of what is great in this world has come from Christianity, okay? Look at this statue, for example, sculpted by Michelangelo, the Pietà. Michelangelo, when he was about 7 years old, his mother had died and how he missed her. And so he made the statue of the Pietà with Mary and Jesus Christu. And it's like him with his mother. I mean, look how big she is compared to Jesus Christu. It's magnificent. It's the most beautiful statue ever made. And he made a lot of other great ones, and a lot of other great ones have been made in the form of Christian art and ancient Greek art in particular. They're magnificent. And the Romans copied them a little bit too, not as spectacularly, but they're magnificent. So if you want to be an artist, the Christian Club has created the best art. There's no one, name one other culture that's made 5% as much beautiful art as Christianity. I'm not aware of it. Okay? There's lots of smart people all over the world, but without Christianity, they don't seem to be able to create much art. Okay? Look at Johann Sebastian Bach, the greatest composer that ever lived. What did he say every single work? All my work is to the glory of God. Michelangelo said the same thing. I create with all my hope I put in God. Okay? Jesus Christu. All right? Michelangelo, I saw the angel in the marble and I sculpted away till I set him free. And that's a good metaphor for making oneself, okay? Creating yourself as an individual, as a unique person rather than a conformist. Okay, Isaac Newton. Okay, Isaac Newton, the greatest scientist who ever lived, smartest person who ever lived. He said he spent more time studying the Bible than he did science, all right? He liked to go for walks, and that's where they always show him sitting down, but actually he was walking when he got that idea of the apple falling in gravity. Okay, and that was popularized by Voltaire. Okay. Now look at this. Here's a statue, created by Picasso. It's a piece of crap, okay? So people get taught, and these scumbag college professors try to pretend that modern art has any significance. They're just a bunch of lowlife. Okay, I consider them communist, useful idiot scumbags. Okay, look at this thing. It's a piece of crap. Who would want that? You wouldn't want that in your house. And they put that in front of a building. That's only one little tiny step up from being a turd. Okay, Picasso was a lousy artist. His art stinks. He was a communist and he was an evil man. Read about his life and you will hate him. Okay, if you learn about him, you will be disgusted by him. All right. And I love this, here's the old test, okay? How do you want to know if something's crap? Could a child have made it, okay? If a child can make it, it's lousy, all right? All that Cubist art is a bunch of garbage. It's the emperor's new clothes. And these phony art critics who say it's good, they're just a bunch of liars. They're laughing at you. It's a joke, okay? Now, also, Christianity, not only did it produce the best painting and the best sculpture, it produced the best architecture. The cathedrals are magnificent. And all these little carvings that tell a story, they're beautiful, okay? The stained glass windows, they're beautiful. And they both educated, people, all the illiterate peasants, for example. And they also inspired people and entertained people. They're magnificent. The best literature comes from Christianity. I mean, okay, look at I think it's the greatest novel ever written, Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, a beautiful work of art. Literature is art. Les Miserables by Victor Hugo. It's magnificent. Okay, Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky. It's magnificent. It has the greatest book chapter ever written with the Grand Inquisitor chapter. And people say to me, well, why do you like Ayn Rand so much? She's kind of an atheist, blah, blah, blah. Let me tell you something. Ayn Rand is a closet Catholic. Okay, if you really read her literature, all she does is sit there and say, Victor Hugo is the greatest writer who ever lived, the greatest novelist who ever lived. When I read him, I feel like I'm walking into a cathedral. Fyodor Dostoevsky is the second best author, novelist who ever lived. The best novel ever written was probably Quo Vadis by Henry Sienkiewicz. Okay, another novel about Christ and Christianity and, St. Peter, okay? So that's why, believe me, this is a magnificent book, Ayn Rand and the Romantic Manifesto, one of the best books ever written about the history of art and literature and culture. And what does she say? She says, I saw the 1800s. She came of age just, after that, around 1930s, okay? She saw it, she read it. She's really smart, smartest woman who ever lived. Okay, and when you study the magnificence of the art of the 1800s, and that came about for multiple reasons. There was a little more freedom and prosperity in the 1800s, and Christianity was still very strong. And man, that's what, most of the paintings, when you see all these paintings I show in my lectures, come from the 1800s. Of course, a lot of it comes from the Renaissance earlier, but the majority of the paintings come from the 1800s, like the Victorian Renaissance, the Pre-Raphaelites and whatnot, Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood. They were magnificent. I'll talk more about them in a moment. Okay, and here's what you get with communism. France is going communist. They burned down Notre Dame Church. The communists in Russia during the 1900s burned down 48,000 churches. There's only going to be more of this kind of crap, okay? If you allow communists to run your country, this is what you get. If the Democrats continue to increase their power in the United States, this is the fate of the Christian churches. This is the fate of the Bible. They're going to make it illegal. It's obvious. Why do you think they're pushing all these modern, pseudo value systems? Because they want to get rid of Christianity. Don't be a chump. Know what that's about. Okay, here's real art. They used to be funded by the Guild. So can you guess what guild funded this? Obviously, this was the Archers Guild. Look at the posture of Jesus Christo's body. It's in the form of a bow, like a bow and arrow, okay? And he's pulling the legs back as if he's drawing the bow. And Mary's position echoes his, okay? It's a magnificent, beautiful painting. And this was done in 1435. What an incredible level of skill. Rogier van der Weyden. Rogier van der Weyden and Botticelli are the two greatest artists of the 1400s. They're magnificent, okay? This is magnificent. If it was made on the current age, it's magnificent, okay? It's an awesome painting. Okay, and here's what you get with modern culture, okay? So this scumbag, Andre Serrano is his name, 1987. He took a crucifix, put it in a jar, and urinated on it. This was called the Piss Christ, okay? Now, what does that do for humanity to see that? You look at the previous painting, it ennobles you. It inspires you. You wish you could do something so beautiful. You see this, and somebody smashed it, which out of anger and disgust. And sometimes, I don't like that type of behavior, but there are some times when, maybe it's appropriate, okay? Somebody pissing on a crucifix. And that got funding from the National Endowment for the Arts, which shows you how evil they are. They've been taken over and corrupted, okay? Now, let's get back to the 1800s, and this is really 1901, 1908, but Edmund Langton, he was inspired by the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood of Painters in England, and this also was inspired, of course, by the art of King literature, and in some ways, King Arthur is a Jesus Christo figure, metaphor for Jesus Christo, and also the idea that he might come back and make things better. That thought, that story, that noble ideal, and isn't this beautiful? Okay, and each night was preached to a lady that he would serve her, and that's kind of what marriage is. A husband's kind of a knight to serve his wife. Okay, in the idea of the traditional Christian family, which is the best way for people to live. Okay, and look how magnificent these paintings are. They're just beautiful and noble and good. And here's more of them. This one's by an Irish painter, Frederick Burton, The Meeting on the Turret Stairs. And so, he knows he has to go. He doesn't know if he's coming back. They're both really sad. It's true love. You could see it. It's beautiful. Okay, I wish I was still young and had that true love feeling like those days, man. I mean, this is the favorite painting of Ireland of all time for good reason. It's just beautiful. And you feel it in your heart. It's true. It's right. It's good. Okay, and here is Godspeed, also by Edmund Layton now, again. And this is, again, the noble. The guy has to go off and fight, He's sad. He misses her. She misses him. She ties a red ribbon around the old oak tree around his arm. Okay, and then Christianity's got room for everybody. That's another thing I like about it. Everybody's welcome, can do their own thing. She was the daughter of a king, but she didn't want to live the life of a royalty. She wanted to live the life of a saint. She joined the secular order of the Franciscans, St. Elizabeth, and fed the poor, okay? So that's what's great about it. So what I'm basically saying is, once I really studied it in detail, I was like, holy crap, it's the light of the world, okay? All right, now here's John Ruskin. He had Scottish parents, so somewhat Presbyterian, somewhat Calvinist. And he grew up in England. His father was kind of wealthy. He traveled around Europe, saw all the great paintings. And he had a sort of a turning point moment when he walked into the Vatican in the stanza signature of the signature room. And he saw on one wall the School of Athens, which he actually liked, but he got pissed off when he saw Mount Parnassus, the mountain of poetry. And that was at the same level of a painting on the other wall, which is sort of like the Communion or the Disputa of theology. And what he felt was that this painting of Mount Parnassus was at the same height on a wall that I don't have included here, that he felt that poetry had been put at the same height of equal value as had religion. And it sort of pissed him off. And so this was painted by Raphael, who was obviously one of the greatest painters of all time. But he felt that Raphael had crossed the line by sort of saying that poetry and literature and that sort of thing was equal to religion. And he felt that that was an incredible sign of disrespect. And he made a great speech, very famous, about there was a group of painters trying to go back to the ancient devoted religious sense of painting, the pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood in England in the mid-1800s. This is part of the Victorian Renaissance, the English Renaissance of the 1800s, which was rather magnificent, and it actually was largely a pushback to Catholicism, even though he himself was a Protestant. So I just want to share with you his speech, because it's the greatest speech about art that ever has been made in the history of the world. He said, "There have been 3 ages in painting. The classical period ending with the fall of Rome. The medieval period extending up to Raphael," and this sort of painting. "And then following Raphael is the modern era. Classicism art was pagan. Medieval art was Christian. Modern art denies Christ. All ancient art was religious. All modern art is profane. The ancient art was moral. The modern art is immoral. In medieval art, truth is first and beauty second. In modern art, beauty is first and truth second. All ancient and medieval art was religious. All modern art is profane. This distinction is as firm as light and darkness. He who offers God a second place offers him no place. Raphael on one Vatican wall wrote that the kingdom of theology is presided over by Christ. And on the other wall, he wrote that the kingdom of poetry was presided over by Apollo. And from that spot and that hour, the intellect and the art of Italy date their degradation. Raphael elevated the creations of fancy to the same rank as the objects of faith on the other. The doom of the arts of Europe went forth from that chamber. The medieval principles had led up to Raphael, and the modern principles have led down from him. Just as classical art was great in building to its gods, medieval art was great in building to its God. And modern art is not great because it builds to no God. Okay, John Ruskin's magnificent speech. You can hear this on YouTube with an English accent that sounds probably like what John Ruskin sounded like, and he was an awesome genius. He was a little bit crazy. All geniuses are a little crazy, but it's a magnificent speech. Okay, and here's kind of also what it all comes down to. We're either created in the image of God or we're not. If we're created in the image of God, then we're partly divine as well as, of course, being part beast, but we deserve natural rights, the right to property, the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And if you're not created in the image of God, if you don't have a religious base of society, then you're screwed. You're just a talking monkey, okay? In a Darwinian point of view, you're descended from apes, and that's what you are, and you should shut your mouth, and you belong in a cage, and you have no rights, and it doesn't matter what you want or think because you're just an animal, and whoever is the wealthy controller of society, they own you, okay? You have no right to your children. You have no right to anything. So just shut your mouth, okay? That's what it comes out. And anybody says otherwise, they want to be Zen Buddhist or some other stuff. That's a godless religion, and it has no metaphysical standing to give it any right to request anything, okay? That's just the way it goes. It's not a question of what I want or what I think. This is well known by anybody who studied these subjects, okay? If you're created in the image of God, an Adam and Eve concept should continue to mankind, then you are an individual, a sovereign person who deserves the right to property and freedom and privacy. If not, here's what you got. Then you're just a talking ape. You belong in a cage. You don't have any right to property. You're going to eat bugs and learn to like it. And don't think that, just like a farmer owns a cow, a dairy cow, and he owns the calf that he sends for veal, they own you, your property, your relatives, everything. Okay? You have no rights. None. Zero. That's what communism is all about. Okay, here's from the book by Brendan Hurd called The Decline and Fall of Western Art. Those of us who are aware of what is happening now will need to work very hard to preserve what still remains of real art's heritage, as modernism shows no signs of slowing down its destructive march. Modernism and postmodernism, there's no difference whatsoever. Postmodernism is just an invented category to pretend that something is moving beyond modernism. So how do we reclaim our rightful vitality? The first step is to acknowledge that we are in decline, to publicly complain about the nonsensical modern art galleries. That's what I'm doing right now in this video. Currently, Europeans are scarcely permitted to acknowledge their history and culture. Yeah, that's because they want to genocide the European Christians. A people's art represents their soul. Art is an indication of a society's health. Like the outward signs of health in the human body, the beauty of art reflects a culture's fitness. For the true artist of today, there is no outlet at all to speak of, let alone to flourish within. When you see Greek sculpture, you sense immediately the greatness of the underlying civilization and its philosophy. You say to yourself, who made this? What is the mystery of this achievement? You know that you have been witness to the artistically superhuman, and that realization can never be unseen. You know, too, in an instant, the near impossibility of surpassing the maturity of that idealism and setting this near impossibly high standard as the goalpost of excellence has been antiquity's greatest gift to the legacy of Western art. This is the track whereupon was set the locomotive of Promethean achievement. Okay, Brendan Hurd from his book, Decline and Fall of Western Art. So yeah, you see, it's magnificent ancient Greek architecture and sculpture and literature and its plays. Okay, and that's why you should study the ancient Greeks. You can say this is how great mankind can be, just like Aristotle's sense of, something noble to aspire to. And here's a painting of Jesus Christu. Okay, when Pontius Pilate put him before the crowd, and the crowd was given a choice. Do you choose to save Jesus Christu, or do you choose to save Barabbas? And the crowd, in its ignorance, chose Barabbas. Okay, and there's going to come a time when everybody listening to this video has a choice. Do you stand up for Jesus Christu, or do you favor Barabbas? Okay, behold the man. Okay, Ecce Homo, a painting by Antonio Cicere. Okay, and everybody's going to have to make that choice. Okay, so choose rightly, speak rightly, because sooner or later, someone you care about, they're going to be chosen by someone else, and you want them to choose rightly, to do the right thing. Okay, Brendan Hurd, a couple more quotes from him in his book about the fall of Western art. The fine art critic, with his verbose obfuscation of the true modern artist, is the real architect of our artless wasteland. Nice sounding nonsense that confuses people and disguises garbage as highbrow intellectual sleight of hand. In his book in 1975, Tom Wolfe crafted the thesis that under modernism, art had moved away from being a visual experience in favor of becoming a literary one. By redefining art, they had made Western art, obsolete. Okay, the modernist movement has made a farce of the once proud tradition of Western art. Okay, the notion that the public accepts or rejects anything is just fiction. The game is completed and the trophies distributed long before the public even knows what happened. Okay, art speak, along with its audacious price tags, it's a way to launder money. Okay, it's a bunch of crap. Has fooled the public into assuming that there's some hidden genius behind this. But it's just a con. And the simple question, could a child have done this? Apply that test, and you will see that Kandinsky's art, it's nonsense. And all the rest of this modernism is the emperor's new clothes, okay? Picasso was a con artist, okay? In 1944, Picasso joined the Communist Party officially, overtly, and he was handed a peace prize by Stalin and the Soviets in 1950. Picasso's a scumbag, okay? Trust me, I studied his life. When you study Picasso, you will have disgust for him. You know, Tolstoy was an evil scumbag, and Picasso was much worse than Tolstoy, okay? Picasso even said, I am a communist and my painting is communist painting. Yeah, and it's a bunch of crap. Okay, here's a Christian painting, a real Christian painting from 1621 by Honthorst, Adoration of the Child. It celebrates life. It celebrates the family, the mother and the father, the siblings, the baby, okay? This is real life. This is meaning, okay? That's what Christianity is all about. Look at modernism. It celebrates death. It wants abortion. It wants medical assistance in dying, okay? It wants depopulation. That's what it's all about. It's evil, okay? It likes every type of sex except for the reproductive marital sex, okay? All right, okay? And like I said, I wanted to understand the truth about Christianity and history and civilization. And once I really studied, and I went deep, you know what a nerd I am, all day long, day after day, week after week, I studied Christianity, I studied art, literature, and history, and I came away from it. I saw the light. It's magnificent. It's beautiful. It gives mankind a way to see the world where he wants to help other people. He wants to be good to other people. He wants to do the right thing. And that's a very beautiful thing. From an aesthetic point of view, it's magnificent. And that's why Christianity cultures produce thousands of times better art than other cultures. All these cultures are not equivalent, okay? Your other cultures, show me your art, show me your architecture, show me your sculpture. You cannot equal what was done by Christianity and its influence from the ancient Greeks. It's just not there, okay? I'm happy to see it. Everybody will tell me, oh yeah, all cultures are the same. BS, okay? There's sad things happen in Mexico, okay? But you look at the Mexico when they went in there with the Aztecs, and you have thousands of human skulls stacked up, okay? How does that compare to Christianity? Christianity has thousands of beautiful paintings stacked up, okay? It's beautiful. Look how magnificent this painting is. And there's the metaphor for seeing the light, coming out of Plato's cave and living a life of cruelty and BS, and instead trying to live a life of kindness and doing good things. Okay. Here's some more quotes by Brendan Hurd. To have allowed into the core of our advanced civilization these obvious lies has been a tremendous foolishness and suicidal. Is it any wonder that we now find ourselves a self-loathing civilization, whitewashing our own glorious history? Expressionism, Dadaism, Cubism, they're all the same thing. Okay, there was some early French Impressionism that was good, but these other movements are all a bunch of crap and lies, okay? Modernism is a visual art philosophy whose goal is to destroy European culture itself by redefining art as something nonsensical, making a joke out of it, making a joke out of everything, making a joke out of the Boy Scouts, okay? What would mighty Vitruvius think of what we have done to our cities? He would decry us as the most decadent and deformed society that has ever existed. Modernist architecture is worse than modernist painting because you can't avoid it. The great majority will suppress anecdotal experience, self-analysis, or even historic fact and objective knowledge if it conflicts with majority opinion. Yeah, the average person, they just don't have the mental gravitas to stand up to majority opinion. And that's why they cave and become useless idiots so often. How sad. They won't do anything that makes them socially uncomfortable. People are simply told by the TV set that something is genius or great, and they believe it. Like the average, that's why I have no respect for these college professors of art who try to pretend that Picasso and Kandinsky and these other modern scumbags have anything artistically useful to say. They don't, okay? And that's why you should have as your default setting to be skeptical. Sometimes, you'll learn something, you'll be surprised, but you should have your default setting to be skeptical when any of these pseudo experts from a university speaks, because most of them are BS artists, all right? Modernism has been with us so long, but it still remains so patently false that subjecting people to it now is almost a strange litmus test for seeing how easily they accept what they are told. While now branded as evil, judgmentalism is in fact a necessity and a good. And it's the only way to develop refined taste and high culture. And to use even more taboo terms, despite all that we have been taught, discrimination is morally right. Discrimination is morally right. We should discriminate between what is good and what is bad. That's the only way we can survive. That's the only way we can tell the difference between something good and bad. Discrimination is an unavoidable part of reality and human nature. You have to know how to seek what is good and avoid what is bad. Otherwise, you're a fool. Okay, now here's beautiful art. This is a painting by Emanuel Lutz in 1851 about GW and the Americans crossing the Delaware at night, to surprise the British and their mercenary Hessians at Trenton. Okay, so that's a magnificent painting. Okay, and you learn from that and look at the modern sort of similar version of a painting. This is George G.W. at Valley Forge by Arnold Freiberg. And I love this painting. It's awesome. Arnold Freiberg was this great painter in America in the late 1900s, and he did the paintings for the Ten Commandments with Cecil B. DeMille, the movie. He did a whole bunch of paintings for the Mormons, and they're beautiful. They're magnificent. The guy's a magnificent painter, Arnold Freiberg, and he paints in a very strong style. Kind of reminds me of Michelangelo. Okay, and this is G.W. praying at Valley Forge, and the horse breathing, and it's all magnificent. And, every man in his own heart has to say, let us hope that civilization continues. Let us try to be our own example of good civilization. Okay, a few more words here. I think these are some other, this is Brendan Hurd again. He says, ultimately, the average person is typically swayed by perceived authority. Major media outlets control public opinion largely by presenting themselves as representing public opinion when actually they're just shaping it. Modernism is not harmless. It is a symptom of the death stage of civilization, and actually it's the cause of that death. Relativism in art means that actual painting, now labeled realism or illustration, has to make way for this crass garbage. They tweak our fears as being portrayed as socially impolite. I have now touched upon how words like racist or sexist alone, just those words, despite being essentially meaningless, contain enough power in them of suggestion to permanently destroy civilization itself. Okay, yeah, we're basically being guilt-tripped into destroying Western civilization, the greatest civilization that's ever existed on the planet, and, exchanging it for slavery. How stupid is that, from all the F- in the water and the brainwashing at the public schools. People will buy into this crap until they give up their patrimony out of ignorance. Okay, it is natural to love our families, our parents, our children, our spouses, our community, and our heritage, and we should speak up for it and defend it. Okay, our decay is fast approaching its nadir, its low point, where we must choose to be self-affirming again, or we shall dissipate into nothingness. It is much easier for the modernists to teach children our civilization is not worth saving when they see only boring glass boxes that look like animal cages, statues of turds in front of them, soul-crushing industrial estates, and then bookshelves full of narcissistic chick lit and other garbage. Okay? Brandon Hurd from The Decline and Fall of Western Art. Okay? Here's another quote. This is by R.H. Gives Gemmell about the twilight of painting. The ultimate importance of modern painting in history of art will be seen as a lie. In fact, it's used to discredit real art, and it's virtually destroyed the great technical traditions of the European painters, laboriously built up over the centuries by a long succession of giants. The loss of these traditions has deprived our potential painters, our young students, of their rightful heritage, a heritage without which it will be impossible for them to give full scope to the talents that they may possess. Yeah, don't turn your back on it. Western civilization and art is superior to other civilizations and their art. If you think that that's incorrect, please put it in the comments. I will be happy to look at it, but I haven't seen it, okay? Okay, yeah, some, Asian painters made some nice tea gardens, okay? That's nice, okay? But it's simply not of the same quality as the Western art inspired by Christianity. It just isn't, all right? And there's some other religions and cultures where they don't even allow painting, okay? Well, then they're not going to produce anything great, okay? And Egyptian hieroglyphics were nice for their time, but they're nothing in comparison with Christian art. Okay, here's where freedom comes from. This is a new painting. This is the painting of the signing of the Constitution, okay? And that's where it comes from. It didn't come from diversity. It didn't come from women. It came from a bunch of men who said, we should all be allowed to be free, pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and have the right to free speech. And you have to have the right to free speech because that leads to everything else good. And you have to have a free press, all right? And this is why the goal of the Democrats, the American Communist Party, is the genocide of the white Christians, because they're the only group that remotely, in the opinion of the communists, has any ability to stand up to communism and slavery. Modern slavery's coming back, okay? And everyone else who thinks, oh yeah, ha, the white Christian men are going to be genocided, they may think that's good, but guess what? Once these guys are gone, communism will control everything. And there's no one else that remotely seems capable of stopping it. The communism believe that that's why they have to go down that path. Once the white male Christian is gone, the white female will be a walk in the park to just throw her into slavery, and all the other women of the world will easily be pushed into slavery, and all the other men will be easily pushed into slavery. That's how the communists see it, okay? That is their opinion. This is in writing. If you search the internet, you will find this is all in writing. This is well known. This is not like some theory of mine. This is all in writing as their plan, and that's what they intend to do, and that's what they're doing right now. Okay, in all other aspects of Western art, literature, and music, the trend and the message is the same. The goal of modernism is degeneration. Modernism is a visual art that tries to, I kind of went through this quote already, okay? All right, so let's go to the next slide. Okay, here's a magnificent painting. This artist is Don Troiani, and this is the Irish Brigade. You see the Irish harp on there? You know why the Irish harp is so cherished by the Irish? Because Queen Elizabeth and other English kings and queens, they basically made it a law. They'd kill any Irish musician. So this is a great thing of honor, the Irish musicians. The Irish musicians and bards did a great service to maintain Irish history and music, okay? And the Irish were very brave when they came to America, fighting in the Civil War. Tons and tons of them fought on the Union side, and also a lot of them fought on the rebel side too, and they actually killed each other quite often, sadly. But this is a big part of where that reputation came of the fighting Irish. So they're famous for being very brave. So this is the Union soldiers, the Irish Brigade. Okay, and this guy's a magnificent painter. I think he's like one of the best painters of military history of all time. Don Troiani, awesome genius of a painter. Okay, and this is by Mort Kunstler, who's also a very good painter of history. And he's painting here the rebel sons of Ireland. So this is a typical the brave, sad stupidity of the Irish fighting each other. Okay, and so here I put it together in the next painting. So here's Don Troiani's Irish Brigade for the North, and here's the rebel sons of Ireland fighting for the South, killing each other like a bunch of dummies. But the art is certainly magnificent. Portrays the fighting Irish, portrays the history of the United States of America. Here's JFK, which is sort of like the high point hope of Christianity having more significance in leadership in the USA, and him being bumped off was sort of like a turning point for communist takeover of the United States, and it's only gotten much worse since then. And here's like the public school system, telling students to memorize a list of vocabulary words that they don't care about and that they're going to forget the next day is the equivalent to punishing somebody like Cool Hand Luke, Paul Newman in the movie, where he's told to dig a ditch, and as soon as he finishes digging the ditch, he has to throw the dirt back in. Then another warden comes along and says, okay, now dig the ditch again, back and forth. And that's what it's like, the public schools, where they just waste the students' time with nonsense. Okay, and I know a lot of teachers are nice, and a lot of teachers are good, and a lot of teachers are smart. I know that, okay? But the system itself is designed to do that to the students, and that's why most of them come out of there kind of a little bit bitter and sad and confused, okay? And when I was in grade school, man, they constantly, I got suspended a whole bunch of times, and I got put in a special class all by myself, and so they're not very nice to smart kids. I think I was just smart, and then I goofed off because I do the work fast. And man, I got in trouble so much in grade school, it was not even funny. If I was back in grade school at my age now, they would have drugged me for attention deficit, okay, just because I was bored. All right, so anyways, here's a magnificent painting, the Pentecost, the idea of giving the gift of speaking in tongues to go out and spread the word and be fruitful and multiply. And it's all, again, Christianity is encouraging life, encouraging free speech, encouraging conversation, encouraging people helping each other. And, and I make the comparison like the vegan diet. Once you learn this nutritional stuff, any health coach who knows about the low-fat vegan diet and how to avoid the common toxins, they can cure, 100 times more patients than any internal medicine doctor, okay, who just knows pharmacology like most of them. So I thought that was kind of beautiful, that idea. So that's Mary in the center, and that's a painting by El Greco, a beautiful painting. Okay, here's another quote. The question is, can Western civilization be saved? This is Brendan Hurd. To attempt to unbalance the gender roles is to go against nature, and to do so is to invite death. And that is what we have done. That is what we are doing right now. Great art is produced by men in painting, sculpture, architecture, and literature. And in his opinion, this is what Brendan Hurd says. Brendan Hurd, he sort of says he thinks that men are much better artists than women because he says that women, in his opinion, are too conformist. Wow, that's a politically incorrect book, isn't it? And in his opinion, he felt that women go along too easily with whatever authorities tell them to do. He said that women will only defend art and culture if it's socially popular to do so. He says women tend to not be willing to go against popular culture. Wow, that's a big statement by Brendan Hurd. Okay. And he also thinks that perhaps that's why the white Christian men are so excessively mistreated and scapegoated, because communism knows that they will speak up for what is right, and they think that the women, it's easy to push women around and control them. Okay, they figure, we'll get the women in a moment. As soon as we get rid of the white Christian men, then it'll be easy to get rid of the white Christian women and all the other women and all the other men. Okay, here he goes again, Brendan Hurd. The Renaissance was largely fueled by rediscovery of pagan texts and the philosophies forgotten by the masses, but kept alive by the Christian monks, and I would add, kept alive by the Irish monks. I gave a book review before about how the Irish saved civilization because their monks preserved the ancient Greek books and the ancient Italian Renaissance Roman books in Latin. The poetic oral tradition was a bridge to ancestor worship from the time of Pericles back to the walls of Troy. The Greeks gave us the formula for artistic beauty, and we will not regain our culture or art or any sort of any significant sort until we earnestly undergo a religious revival. Yep, that's true. We're either going to respect Christian traditions, values, philosophy, art, and literature, or we are going to be communist-owned slaves. That's obvious. Okay, to reclaim a metaphysical view, even a rational one, is the kernel of creativity. There is a slowly dawning realization amongst artists and philosophers that we cannot live without a metaphysic, meaning our religious roots and philosophy. When we individually or as a society determine that human religion is not true and do away with the concept of God, it seems that we cannot do so without leaving behind that which is best in us. Yeah, basically, if you lose religion, the culture goes to garbage. We can see vividly in our artworks of today, all of which are failures, the loss of the spiritual element. The direct relationship between spirituality, religion, and art is fundamental. We need to believe in ourselves in order to create art. Can Western civilization be saved? The puppet masters do not want us to have art or ideas. They want a tactless strip mall population of spiritless drones. But our tradition is not gone from us. It is merely hidden. This is Brendan Hurd. His book's called The Decline and Fall of Western Art. It's a great book. And here's the choice we have. We can either go along with all this communist BS that's being forced upon us, and we're going to end up like this painting, The Isle of the Dead by Arnold Brocklin, 1883. We got soy is subsidized to make us infertile. Okay, it's a bunch of crap, all right? Atrazine, super estrogenic, is put on the corn that is subsidized and used to sweeten stuff to make us infertile. It's a bunch of crap, and it's a mitochondrial inhibitor to make us stupid. F- to make us infertile and to make us stupid. Okay, and a whole bunch of other estrogenic chemicals in our clothing, in our soaps, in our laundry detergent, in our deodorants, in our colognes, our perfumes, our personal care products, our dishwasher detergent, on and on, okay, to push towards infertility, cancer, and stupidity, and obesity, and diabetes. All right, you want to choose that? Or do you want to choose the island of life? Okay, Arnold Brocklin also painted this one, where we can have families and have children and be fertile. And feminism, telling women they don't need men, making them not want to be loyal to their man, so the man don't want to marry them, and they're all split apart, and everybody ends up unhappy and without any kids. And women, I think there's an epidemic of infertility. If they want to have a baby, they better not wait too long, because I think a lot of them are going to wait till their 30s and not be able to have kids. And a lot of old folks are not going to have grandkids because their kids waited too long to have kids. Anyways, choose the island of life. Let's help each other and have families and restore our traditions and enjoy beautiful art and freedom and free speech. We have to choose this, because if we don't choose, it'll be choosing for us and we'll be all made slaves.